Go ahead, Ma'am Lynn. Okay. To present the weekly home learning plan, let us welcome Ma'am Rosalie Bong.
So
Yes,
again,
ma'am.
yes. So again, good morning, everyone, and welcome to your second session for this day. The session is entitled the Weekly Home Learning Plan, Developing Independent Learners. Okay, so why did I write this title, Weekly Home Learning Plan, Developing Independent Learners? As you know, the Weekly Home Learning Plan is the primary guide of our learners and now that they are on distance learning. I can liken this weekly home learning plan to a guidepost or probably a lighthouse. You know, in the olden times, you know what a lighthouse is? It is a tower that emits a bright light, and it is this bright light which guides the ship, no? The ship, so that they will be able to find their direction, okay, um, while they navigate the seas when it is dark, okay? So, well, I am not saying that the learners are in the dark right now, okay? What I am saying here is that without the weekly home learning plan, the learners might not be able to find their direction in terms of spending their academic time, okay, during weekdays. Okay? And while the teachers are geographically distant from the learners in this time of the pandemic, it is the weekly home learning plan that will give direction to both the young learners and their parents. That's why it is developing them to work independently without much intervention from the teachers, like the usual 6 hour presence of the teacher in the classroom. Okay? So let me proceed with the sequence of my presentation. I will discuss the context and purpose of weekly home learning plan. And then I will give you a walkthrough of a sample weekly home learning plan. And then finally, I will briefly discuss the implications for instruction of the weekly home learning plan. The first question is, why do we need to prepare the weekly home learning plan? Okay, why do teachers need to prepare the weekly home learning plan? You know it, prior to the pandemic and the implementation of distance learning, lesson planning was a critical requirement as per DepEd Order number 42, series of 2016, or the policy guidelines on daily lesson preparation for the K-12 basic education program. The lesson plan serves as a guide for instruction, okay? So therefore, it is for teachers' use, okay? And it contains details of what teachers and learners will do in order to meet the instructional objectives while they are together in a physical classroom. Now, given the new context for learning and the unique procedures in distance learning delivery modalities, we have adopted the weekly home learning plan. In fact, in DMCI 2020-162, it says there, to ensure that learners are on task and are guided on what they are expected to accomplish within a specific week, teachers shall prepare a weekly home learning plan. Okay? That's why it is required that teachers collaborate, okay, in order to prepare one weekly home learning plan for every week. Okay? I just want to be clear, one weekly home learning plan for every week for the entire class. Okay? Covering all the learning areas. It doesn't have to be 8 weekly home learning plans. Why 8? Because for every learning area, okay, there are times when teachers teachers develop one weekly home learning plan, which is not supposed to be, because a weekly home learning plan is supposed to be um, done collaboratively so that teachers will come up with just one weekly home learning plan. Okay? I will elaborate on that once I go on with my session. Now, you are familiar with the essential components of the weekly home learning plan. Okay? In DNCI 162, there is in one of the enclosures there is a sample weekly home learning plan, and that weekly home learning plan is composed of 5 columns. We have the time and day. Now, the time and day, of course, refers to that time when the student is supposed to do a certain learning task. Okay? The day also obviously refers to that day when the student is supposed to do the learning task at a specific time. Okay? So that this is very important because, as you know, we have young learners, and actually even learners in K to 3 and in case in key we have learners in key stage 3 and key stage 4. I mean the junior high school and senior high school, who this is a painful yet inescapable fact that they still need guidance when it comes to their time management. Okay, and if we just give them the self-learning module without the weekly home learning plan specifying the particular learning task that they're going to do at a specific time and day, they might just go astray, and they might not be able to meet the time frame that is or the due date that is set by the teacher. So much more for learners in key stages 1 and 2. Okay, that's why we need this time and day. Now, the time and day is also essential because we would like you to still meet the time allotment as provided for in the policy guidelines on the K-12 Basic Education Program, DO21, Series of 2019. It stipulates the time allotment for every learning area. However, the difference is that time allotment can be very flexible as to how you are going to meet that. Okay, in the usual face-to-face classes, sometimes we have 40-minute periods each day for a certain learning area, or 50 minutes or 1 hour period. It depends upon the learning area, and then we meet them on specific days, almost every day. Okay, in all learning areas. Okay, in order to meet the time allotment. But now that we are on distance learning and we understand that there are a lot of limitations and learners are working on their own, with sometimes with assistance and supervision of the parents and other learning facilitators at home, we are not so strict as to maintaining the daily 50 minutes, okay, or the daily 1 hour allotment for every learning area. This is one of the decision points that the department is giving to the divisions or to the schools. You are the best people who know your learners, okay? And you can allot actually a 1 hour period, a 1.5 time period, or a 2 hour period in each day, just to be able to cover the time allotment required in DO21 series of 2019. Okay? But, we have always emphasized that the needs and context of your learners. So that is one decision point that you have to, discuss among yourselves in your respective stations. I know you already have your existing practices, and if you have proven that effective, then continue with that. If not, then probably you have to strategize, find another way to make, to find another more effective practice. Okay? Anyway, naman, the distance learning modality is always a work in progress, and that includes our weekly home learning plan. And the second component is the learning area. You know it, the learning area, these are the subjects prescribed to be learned by the learners in a particular grade level or key stage. Okay? The learning tasks, these are the formative learning opportunities created for learners in order to, not only track their progress, but more so enhance their understanding of the learning content. Okay, that's why we treat this learning task as formative assessment. Okay, you know it when we say formative assessment, as mentioned by probably Sir Joseph and a while ago by Sir Lito. Formative assessments are not meant to be graded, okay, but they are recorded for the purpose of tracking the progress of our learners. How far are they progressing in preparation for the summative assessment? And not only that, the learning task, okay, or also help teacher adjust the instruction, the strategy that she is using now that you are on distance learning. Okay. Now, a complete detail on the reference for the learning task should also be indicated. You give a learning task, but what is the module title? And that should be indicated under learning task. What is the module title? Um, you may have to write the SLM code. Okay. You have to give clear and specific tasks. And now you have to refer students to the page number where that task is found in case you lift that task from the SLM or from the learning activity sheet. Okay? And of course, you have to give the time allotment. Now, this time allotment is different from the time and day in the first component. The time allotment here refers to the specific amount of time that you think your learners will be able to finish a certain learning task that you have given, depending upon their readiness, depending upon their, capability. Okay. Now, we also highly encourage that under the learning task, you provide processing questions. These processing questions may or may not be found in the SLM or nor in the learning activity sheet. Okay? But these processing questions can be part of the teacher's creativity. This can be part of the teacher's desire to be able to understand how the learners learn, what the learners have learned, and why probably they have not learned the particular lesson or task. Okay? So those are processing questions. So you do not only limit the learning task to the task itself, but also questions that will help learners understand their own learning. That's metacognition. That's what we call as metacognition. Or you can also make use of processing questions as part of reflection for the students. Okay? Reflections on how they have answered, what they have learned, what new insights they gained, okay, how they were able to accomplish that. Okay? And then we also have learning competencies. You know it. The learning competencies, this refers to the knowledge, understanding, skills, and attitudes that learners demonstrate in every lesson or learning activity. Now, this time, in the pandemic, these are what we refer to as the most essential learning competencies. Okay? And then we have the mode of delivery. The mode of delivery should not be misinterpreted as the modality. Okay? You don't need to write the modality under the mode of delivery because the modality that you are using for your learners is specifically stated right, in the title of the weekly home learning class. Okay? What modality are you using? Are you using purely modular distance learning? Are you using blended modular distance learning and PDRBI or blended modular distance learning plus online distance learning? Okay, that's the modality. But under the mode of delivery, this component refers to the method of submission, okay, of learning output, okay, of learning output as results of the learning tasks indicated. How are the learners going to turn in the outputs to the teachers? Okay, will the parents going to hand in the output to the teachers? Are they going to submit that through a Google Classroom? Are they going to send that in a through an SBGC? Are they going to submit that through email or whatnot? Okay, that's the mode of delivery. And then we also have considerations in designing the weekly home learning plan. It's not enough that you know the components. It's not enough that you know the MELC or the learning task, but you have to consider this essential things, especially because you know everybody seems to be anxious, fearful in this time of pandemic, and we are catering to young, vulnerable learners. Okay, the first one is wellness. Okay, when you design the weekly home learning plan, always have in mind the best interest of the learners. Okay, that's why in the sample weekly home learning plan that we provided in DMCI 162, we started the time in day there. I remember it's 7 to 8 a.m. We started with have a breakfast or make up your bed. No, make up your bed. That's one form of discipline. Make up your bed, take a bath, have a breakfast. Uh, you know, for a short time, bond with your family. That's part of wellness. And probably during the middle of the day, you can have learners should have lunch break, allow them to take a power nap, exercise. Along the week, and during the week, you can ask them to do um, leisure reading, pleasure reading, okay? Indulge in their habits, okay, or in their hobbies. That's part of wellness, okay? Don't forget to include that in the weekly home learning plan because we are not only, growing learners for the sake of your, cognitive development. We are also trying to develop all aspects of their personality. So wellness is very important. In fact, in DMCI 162, it explicitly states there that teachers should strike a balance between academic rigor and socio-emotional aspect of learning. Okay, we really emphasize that in that issuance. Likewise, we also have the DepEd memo on fostering academic ease. Okay, this memo is telling us not to bombard learners with learning tasks which are found in the SLM. You may have to decide as the teacher whichever is relevant, which task is relevant, which task is irrelevant, which task is no longer necessary for your learners, considering their current progress. Okay? And then we also have the DepEd Order number 31, series of 2020. That's the interim policy guidelines on assessment, on grading and assessment in light of the basic education learning continuity plan. It is also explicitly stated in that issuance that teachers may provide a certain level of leniency, okay, when it comes to giving learning tasks and when it comes to giving deadlines on the submission of learning output, as long as you do not sacrifice the attainment of the most essential learning competencies. So these are all parts of wellness, and I hope that you try to make this provision happen in your classroom. Okay, and then we also have planning. Okay, it's really essential to plan. Okay, if you do not plan down, you plan to fail, di ba? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Okay, and this time we cannot afford to fail. Okay, we cannot afford to fail. Planning means that you have the best interest of the learner in mind. Planning means that you work on the weekly home learning plan in collaboration with other teachers handling the same section, or if possible, handling the same grade level. Okay, you work together. Okay? You have the SLM in your hand. You have the learning activity sheet. You know the time and day. Think of the learning task. After having in mind or scribbling this learning task, meet with your fellow teachers handling the same section or the same grade level. And then work together on designing one holistic, comprehensive weekly home learning plan. That is why if you have seen the sample in the MCI 162, all learning areas are there. Okay, so meaning it's not just a product of one teacher, but everyone working collaboratively. What is the purpose for this? So that we will not have conflict, no time conflict. Okay, on the part of the learners as when they are going to do the learning tasks assigned in math, assigned in science, assigned in English. Other than that, so that learners will not be bombarded with so many learning tasks, okay? So many learning tasks. Others are no longer necessary for them. Also, so that we can do integrative learning for students, integrative teaching, we can do integrative assessment by coming up with integrative performance tests. Meaning, we may not give one separate or two separate performance tasks solely for our learning area. There can be one performance task for all learning areas as long as the learning competencies that you are targeting are being met by that particular performance task. And so we can do that. But that can only happen when you work collaboratively with your fellow teachers. Okay? In the higher level of learning, we call that as interdisciplinary approach. Okay? Interdisciplinary approach. So, one authentic task, one authentic performance task for learners covering all subject areas. So that is very much possible. Okay? So it says here that the weekly home learning plan cannot and should not be done alone by an individual teacher. Much more because you are much more on your part because you are catering to multi-grade learners. Okay. Another consideration here, so all teachers collaboratively preparing a weekly home learning plan should ensure curriculum alignment. Okay? So you analyze whether the tasks in the SLMs are sufficient to cover them all. If not, then you provide additional learning experiences through instructional scaffolding in whatever means, okay? Or give enrichment tasks, okay? Or remediation tasks. That is why the SLM, the learning activity sheet, should not be taken as Bible by teachers. Okay? And teachers, again, I say here, employ professional judgment. I think that has something to do with ensuring curriculum alignment because you are the best person who can decide whether that task in the SLM is appropriate for your learners, or that the task may not be directly lifted because you think that there are prerequisite skills that that your learners should be able to learn first before melt. You know that the competency is quite difficult for our learners because they might not have learned first the necessary prerequisite skills before they are able to learn that particular competency. Then you have to teach the prerequisite skills first. The learners have to achieve the prerequisite skills first. Okay? Provide clear and specific or explicit directions. Let us not give our learners problems in terms of the language that we use. Alam nyo, hirap na sila sa learning task, hirap pa silang intindihin yung direction. Okay, so they already have two problems. The direction that you give is quite difficult to understand, too complicated. You have to remember that learners are at home and they cannot communicate with you anytime they desire because of, these limitations that we are currently experiencing. So as much as possible, make your directions under the learning task specific, concrete, and clear. This one, employ professional judgment. As part of employing professional judgment, aside from, making sure that there is curriculum alignment in the task, you also have to budget the learning tasks in the weekly home learning plan. Do not schedule all SLM tasks or all LIS tasks in one day, as it will be very cumbersome for your learners. Always think of the well-being of your learners, aside from their academic needs when preparing the learning task. Okay? So that is under employing professional judgment. Also, Formulate critical and creative questions. Ensure that the questions that you are going to provide will contribute to the learner's development of creative and critical thinking. Come up with questions that are well thought out. Um, a lot, a certain, amount of time where you are going to think deeply about the kind of task, the kind of questions that you are going to give your learners. Let this not be a mechanical task for the teachers. Okay. Let when you design the weekly home learning plan, imagine your learners. Think about your learners. What are their needs? Ano yung nagagawa ni Pedro na hindi nagagawa ni Juan, na hindi nagagawa ni Maria, pero nagagawa ni Petra, whatever. Okay? So think about them. Okay? That's why Sir Lito mentioned about differentiated instruction a while ago. It is also in the weekly home learning, well, in the weekly home learning plan, oftentimes we give what is appropriate for the average learner. Okay? um, I understand you will think that it is, taxing for you to differentiate the weekly home learning plan, but you still have the individual learning monitoring plan. It is in the individual learning monitoring plan where you can differentiate instruction, because this is where you give enrichment tasks. This is where you give interventions, remediation for learners who are struggling. But not only for learners who are struggling, you can make use of individual monitoring plans for learners who are quite advanced. Because when you give them tasks which are appropriate for the average learners, weak performing learners might get bored. When you give learning tasks to learners, there should always be a certain amount of challenge that they will experience so that they will continue to be motivated to work on the learning task. And of course, set clear expectations. Okay, see to it that the expectation for each set task, probably what do they need to do before, during, or after, should be clearly stated. Okay, and you should be very clear with the kind of output that they are going to turn in. In that case, you really need to prepare rubrics for learners, not just criteria, okay, but rubrics. Okay, so it's important so that learners will not be frustrated and you as a teacher will not be frustrated because you are clear about your expectations. Then it is necessary to come up with rubrics. Okay? Sometimes teachers, they lose their patience, they lose their tolerance, and they get demotivated when learners turn in learning outputs which are lower than what is expected by the teachers. But we also have to reflect as teacher, where lies the mistake? Okay, did we develop rubrics? Did we set our expectations? Were we clear about the directions or instructions that we gave to our learners? So, point for reflection also on the part of the teachers. Another consideration is feedback. The feedback is very important. Okay, in the weekly home learning plan that I'm going to show you later, you will see there this is no longer part of the template for the weekly home learning plan, but this is probably an additional point that you may consider, because as you know, feedback is very important. Teachers need to establish how feedback will be provided to their learners and how learners will be able to provide feedback to the teachers in terms of the learning tasks that they have given, in terms of the amount of help that they have provided, in terms of the deadline that is set by the teachers. Learners should also be free to give feedback to the teachers. Okay? Through this process of giving feedback, teachers can improve their instruction while learners can improve their learning. In fact, there is an assumption that along the process, that when feedback is provided, teaching is already continuing. So as a result, formative assessment, when delivered using feedback, significantly impacts student learning. And actually, when it is an embedded component of a teacher's daily engagement, daily instructional engagement with the learners, feedback can be very beneficial for the learners. Okay, and it can be provided in any means. So you have three-level model of feedback. This is maybe familiar to you because it is provided in the issuance on interim policy guidelines on grading and assessment. You can give feedback on the task level, Is the task too difficult for you, learners? Is the task too easy? Okay, is the task too complicated for you? Where lies the difficulty? Okay, that's the task level. On the process level, okay, how were you able to do your task? How were you able to accomplish it? Did you seek help from your parents? Okay, did you seek help from your learning facilitator? How were you able to accomplish that? Or why were you not able to accomplish the learning task? Okay, and self-regulation level, awareness of one's ability to learn. Okay, self-regulation level. Okay, what help do you need? uh, what do you consider as your strength in terms of this learning task? What do you consider as your weaknesses? So these are questions that teachers can give to the learners and that learners can provide to the teachers so that teachers will have an idea as to how they are going to adjust the learning task. Remember, when it comes to teaching, there is no one size that fits all. Okay? Every child is unique. That is why we need this test. Other considerations in selecting learning tasks are these questions. Is the topic difficult or new that requires more time to explain or demonstrate the skill? This has a reference to the task in the SLM or reference to the task in the learning activity sheet. You ask yourself as a teacher, am I going to directly lift this activity? What if this activity is just too difficult for my learners? Okay, what should I do? Okay, as a teacher. Do my learners need more examples aside from the ones listed in the module? And it happens, okay, that what is stated in the module is not enough. You know, we are limited as per LR standards. We are limited to number of pages per module, okay? Now, you know it, okay? Ang dami nagrereklamo mga parents, nahihirapan yung mga anak nila, you know, nadadamihan sa activities, okay? Nahihirapan intindihin. So where will you come in as a teacher? Are you just going to, you know, let it be? Kaya hayaan mo lang ba kasi yun ang nakalagay sa SLM? You have to find a way as a teacher. This is your duty as a teacher aside from the so many paperwork that you are beset with, okay? At, you know, this is the painful fact again that a lot of teachers, I'm not saying all teachers, a lot of teachers don't have time for quality instruction because their reason is that they just have too many paperwork. I don't know what these paperwork are, okay? But, you know, this is our primary job description, to be able to make our learners immeasurably better once they go out of our classroom, may it be physical or virtual classroom. After 1 year, ano nangyari sa bata? May progress ba sa klase mo or wala? Pag wala, well, you might have to do a deep reflection. Can this task be done better when learners work together? Decide on that. Can this task be done individually? Is there a learning task that I want to replace? Or a learning task not found in the module that I want my learners to work individually or in groups? Then you decide on that. Is there a part in the lesson where most of my learners encountered difficulties based on the assessment results and feedback from the parents? Okay, that's another thing. Another question. Does the assessment require knowledge type of answers or do they require demonstrations? Okay, is it enough that learners answer the formative assessment through paper and pencil and refer to the answer key whether their answer is right or wrong? Or do they need to demonstrate that skill so that there will be an authentic learning? Can this task be done successfully by majority of my class without direct supervision from me? Are my learners familiar with the topic? Have they mastered the lesson in what is it? And are they ready to work on their own? You should know the answers to these questions as teachers. Does the assessment require my learners to provide unique original output? Does the task require longer period to be accomplished? Oh, in that case, you have to adjust the date of submission. You cannot, you know, expect your 50 learners in one class, okay, to be able to finish the task in the weekly home learning plan, okay, simultaneously. You know it. Kaya nga sabi kanina ni Sir Lito, there is what we call as tiering. There is tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, okay? You can scale up, you can scale down, okay? You can scale up for learners who are quite advanced and scale down for learners who are struggling. Okay? And therefore, just the same. They cannot finish their task simultaneously. Hindi yan pwedeng, oh, sabay-sabay ganito. You have to give allowances. Okay? Allowances for each learner. That is still part of differentiated instruction. Sabi nga kanina ni Sir Lito, it's not only the activities that you differentiate. It's a shallow definition of differentiated instruction when you say that you differentiate because in one group you requested them to compose a song. Another group, you requested them to, demonstrate through a dance. Another group through writing a poem. Well, that can be part of differentiation, but that's not entirely differentiation. Okay? Does the task require immediate or peer feedback, or does it involve long-term planning? Okay. Now, time management is the key. Time management is an important skill. You know that. Okay? Even for us, teachers, and much more for our learners. Time management is one that most of us teachers would say is essential to academic success in our classes. Yet, we all often assume it's a skill unlike others that learners either come to us with with it or that they should be able to learn it on their own. A specific time frame is very important. We can teach this. It's not just, listing down the schedule, but, explicitly indicating how much time is allotted to every task. We have to have a good, we need to have a good estimation when it comes to the duration of the activity. Realistic expectation and doable tasks. This entails breaking the larger skill or task into smaller, distinct sub-skills or sub-tasks. For example, the module has 3 lessons. Do not expect them to finish all 3 lessons in one sitting. Okay? Allocate time based on the results of their previous formative assessment. For example, in the middle of the week, you notice that they are not getting score in one task or in one online task if you are doing blended. Then you can modify the plan, like extend more time for the submission. So what I am telling here is that you do proper accommodation and modification strategies. Remember that the weekly home learning plan should be very flexible. Okay? Now this time, I'm going to show you an example of a weekly home learning plan, but this is not really for elementary learners. Since I am assigned to the junior high school, I have prepared here one for junior high school. But I just want to show you the dynamics, the interplay among modalities. But other than that, I think what is most important is one that you can make use in your workshop. What you need to indicate in your weekly home learning plan. So you have it here. I have here the time for the morning routines. Do not forget to indicate that. I mentioned this already a while ago. So you have the morning routines. Also here, you don't need to write exactly the task from the SLM or the learning activity sheet. Do not copy verbatim. Because, the learners already have a copy of the SLM, right? They do have a copy also of the LAS. And so you can just indicate there, get your activity notebook, okay, and be able to answer the following part, okay? So what I know that is found on this particular page, and then the time allotment, how long are they going to work on this? 5 minutes, they can do that. And then after doing that, what's new? In what page? Is it in the SLM or is it in the LAS? Sir Lito mentioned a while ago that you can make use of the SLM in of the LAS to supplement or to even to substitute some parts of the SLM. Okay? If you deem it necessary, then you have to indicate the page. What are they going to use? Is it the SLM? What page? How much time is needed for that task? Enumerate everything there. Okay? So indicate the page number. There are independent learning instructions. You don't need to copy. Isa ito sa mga pinoproblema ng mga teachers when we had our PIR na kinokopya pa daw nila, which is not necessary. That's why the learners have the SLM already. Okay? Just indicate what part of the SLM are they going to work on, the page and the time. And then that's it. Okay? So here in this slide, I've shown you that you need to allow students to do morning routines as part of their wellness. Give independent learning instructions, indicate the page number, and then the time allotment for every learning task. And that there is no need to copy what's the task in the SLM or LAS. Okay? So just the same here, you have the page number, but you also have here, right at the bottom of this slide, are the processing questions for learners. Now this time, these are questions for self-reflection. You can always add this, okay? Para naman yung mga learners, we are soliciting divergent responses, hindi lang convergent responses, hindi lang categorical questions ang ibibigay natin sa kanila, where all answers are found in the answer key. Okay? We are trying to elicit, critical and creative responses from our learners, and that will only happen through the help of the processing questions. Perhaps the SLM may have this, some SLMs may have this, some LASS may have this, but it's the processing questions. Don't forget to indicate it there. Okay? For the next slide, what I am showing you is actually just one weekly home learning plan. But much of the components here, already. You have the time and day, you have the learning area, and then you have the competencies, tasks, and the mode of delivery. Okay? So just the same, you have to indicate the processing questions, the instructions, the page number and the minute, and of course the independent learning instructions. Okay? You also have here guideposts for learners. Okay? Just reminder for learners, ensure that you read and understand the direction, yung mga magganon. Okay? These things are needed. Guideposts for learners. Okay? Reminders for learners. Okay? So also include that in your weekly home learning plan. Okay? And then, so you have it here, the guideposts for learners, you have the task, and then if you are working on blended modalities, think as to how you are going to create a logical interplay or dynamics of these different modalities. SLM and TVRBI, if you are using TV and the DepEd TV, or through the DepEd TV, you have to know the program grid. In the program grid, you have the schedule here and the specific episodes. Okay? Now, the DepEd TV, for your information, is not only available, it's not limited to IBC 13. We also have DepEd TV via the online DepEd TV website. You go there, okay, and then that will lead you to, once you click an episode there, that will lead you to the DepEd YouTube channel, okay? I would like you also, for more instruction on using the DepEd TV, I would like you to refer to the joint memorandum which we issued a week ago. It's entitled Maximizing the Use of DepEd TV and Other Blended Learning Delivery Modalities. It's a joint memorandum of the Office of the Undersecretary for Administration, USEC Alain, USEC Reb C. Escobedo, as far as I remember, and of course, USEC DAG San Antonio for curriculum and instruction. Okay? There we are encouraging the field to make use of the DepEd TV. Okay? So how are you going to create the interplay between the SLM and the DepEd TV now? The DepEd TV cannot be used as a sole modality, but only as a supplement. Okay? Only as a supplement. Now, considering that the multi-grade learners, we understand that much of our learners in the multi-grade do not have access to internet connection, then we understand if you are making use of the purely modular distance learning, in that case, you make use of the SLM and the learning activity sheet. Okay? And in fact, that's less challenging for teachers to develop a weekly home learning plan using only one modality with two primary sources, which are the SLM and LAS. But, if we want to, broaden our learning resources, and if learners have them at home, then make use of blended learning delivery modalities. And, of course, the last but not the least, the feedback. This is no longer in the DMCI 162, but as we, try to understand the needs of the learners and the needs of the teachers through our series of Kumustahan in BLD and CIRs, we realize the need for feedback. Feedback from learners, okay? Here we ask questions, okay? Katulad ng sinabi ko kanina dun sa 3-level model of giving feedback, task level, process level, and self-regulation level. Okay? In fact, one question here says, which module among all the subjects helps you, okay? Helps you the more in understanding the lesson. Okay? The student will have to respond. Okay, how did the TV episode, if you're using the TV episode, or probably you can ask, how did the learning activity sheet, okay, help you in understanding the lesson, okay? What kind of help or support did you get from your parents? Now, if you have young learners, well, I understand multi-grade, we're catering to young learners. You can also solicit feedback from parents because they are supposed to be directly involved in the learning of their children at home. Okay, so what kind of support did you provide in accomplishing the learning task? Okay, what issues or challenges do you experience or did you experience? How did you address these issues or challenges? I think that these are essential. Answers to these questions are essential for the teachers to know, okay? So that she can give the proper remedy, okay? In return, teachers should also be able to provide feedback to the learning outputs of their learners. Um, it is very important that learners and parents at this time are updated in terms of the learning progress of their children, and they will only know that through the feedback of the teachers. Huwag na nating pahintayin ng parents na malaman lang ang learning progress ng kanyang anak at the end of the school year or at the end of the quarter during the distribution of grades. Parents and learners have the right to know their learning progress. Okay? Formative na, di ba? Formative assessment. How far have they been doing before the summative assessment? Huwag naman natin silang bibiglain at the end of the quarter. Hindi natin pinaalam kung kumusta ang progreso ng bata. They could have done something before their child, failed. Okay? So that's the importance of feedback, and I hope that you will be able to include that in your weekly home learning plan once you proceed with the workshop. Okay? So that's the example for the weekly home learning plan. I hope you got something new from there, aside from the innate components of the weekly home learning plan. Now for the implications, for the what, as teachers, we need to analyze the curriculum goals per learning area. What we should be indicating in the learning task should be preparation for learners. Okay? Preparation not only for the next week, for the succeeding week, not only for the succeeding quarter, but can be a preparation for their next grade level. Okay? A preparation for their next key stage. And, ultimately a preparation for life when they go out of the perimeters of the school and they are ready to take, their chance in their respective workplaces. So analyze that. Of course, we begin doing that by analyzing the content, the performance standards, and the most essential learning competencies. Okay? I hope that you are so familiar with the MELCs. Ang konti lang ng MELCs natin ngayon, so I hope you are very familiar with it. Okay? I hope you are familiar with the knowledge, understanding, and skills that are embedded in the MELCs. And the why, you have to know and understand the goals of the K-12 basic education program. Okay, let us not be one page ahead of our learners. As much as possible, we have to be one book ahead of our learners, or probably one library ahead of our learners. Okay? And of course, the how, we have to equip ourselves with content, with knowledge of content and pedagogy, and see how they work in the distance learning delivery modality. You know this. This is indicated in DepEd Order 21, series of 2019, the pedagogical approaches that we can make use. We have constructive distance, inquiry-based, we have reflective, we have collaborative. All this are pedagogical approaches that we can make use when we develop the learning task for our learning. Okay? And I'd like to say that even if our learners are located in geographically isolated areas, we can design learning experiences. Also, either they are in geographically isolated or they are in the urban area, we can design learning experiences using high-tech, low-tech or no-tech approaches. Okay? um, this menu of learning delivery modalities that we now currently have by virtue of the learning continuity plan is a manifestation that DepEd is very much in a situation where learners do not have the same access to devices or internet at home. So whether it is high tech, low tech, or no tech, what is critical is that we are able to deliver learning in an equitable manner. So as long as teachers are able to follow the principles related to engaging learners, okay, whether it is multi-grade or not, and that we are able to establish connections and design authentic activities, then I am pretty sure that these learners will be able to experience, success in distance learning delivery modalities. And on to my last slide, always remember that in guiding and monitoring learners in the different distance learning delivery modalities, teachers have to remember that there are no perfect lessons. Yeah? There are no perfect lessons, but with the right purpose and best efforts, we will be able to give the best to our learners, even in this, difficult situation. And second, one way of getting feedback from learners is by communicating regularly with them and their parents or guardians or their siblings. As teachers, we need to make the learners feel our presence. And of course, send them a message that they are not alone in this situation. This will, greatly help them stay motivated. And finally, remember that as teachers, we are part of a larger community of learners. We are learners. And we would need support from our coaches, our supervisors who are probably now with us here, our school heads, and of course, our fellow teachers as we adapt to the new normal. Okay, so that's all for my session on designing weekly home learning plans, developing independent learners. Okay. Um, Thank you very much for listening, everyone. And I hope that you have learned something from this session, which can be beneficial to your workshop in the next hour. Thank you so much, Ma'am Carmen and Ma'am Ian.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Rosalie. Back to you, Ma'am Ian. Thank you so much, Ma'am Rosalie, for the very clear discussion on the weekly home learning plan. Ma'am
Thank you,
Ian,
Thank you, Ma'am Carmen, and thank you, Ma'am Rosalie. So, due to time constraints, i-move po natin yung ating breakout sessions this afternoon. Pero before po tayo mag-break for lunch, we will play the video on the recap for the previous day.
Here is the recap of yesterday's session. After the preliminaries that included the playing of a nationalistic song, the playing of a spiritual song, the checking of attendance of the participants, and the recap of the previous day's events, we proceeded to the day's activity. We had 5 speakers who presented sample learning activity sheets. And our speakers were Ma'am Leia Gutera, Sir Marvin Bolivar, Ma'am Cindy Abisames, Sir George Grabe, and Sir Ian J. Arce. Congratulations to these 5. The next session was delivered by Ms. Angel Habinez, where she discussed ADM and the SLM. We learned a lot about the history of ADM in its purpose and the content, structure, foundations, and the processes involved in the development of the self-learning users. And we were left with a lot of learnings, and here are a few highlights. So students can only be at the ADM program if they are enrolled in the formal school system. The target learners of ADM are those from the K-12 program who are officially enrolled in formal school but are at risk of dropping out for various reasons. Some of these because of illness, obligations at home, difficult circumstances, pregnancy, conflict with the law, working at daytime, or the house is too far from school, And the good thing about this is MG students at risk of dropping out can be helped through ADM. And then she moved on to SLM. And the SLM, of course, is the primary material for distance learning. SLMs are conversational in nature because the SLMs themselves serve as the teacher to the students as they do remote learning. The key to correction helps make students self-reflective and responsible for their own learning. This can also be used as a guide of learning facilitators on the learning progress of their students and in coordinating with the teachers. Now, an example on how LES can supplement SLM is this. Students who are having difficulty with SLM can give LAS, which are simpler to support them. Now, if students are fast learners, the LAS can be used for enrichment. She also gave us a few reminders regarding the activities and formative assessment. So all activities should be doable at home and students should have options in terms of the resources needed for activities. Activities should be connected and have a good transition. Also, activities mostly are formative in nature, so they're not recorded, but for your guide, for the teacher's guide on how to further support the students. The students should give the generalizations, not the teachers, and she really highlighted this. Give any activity that will show what the students learn. And then, of course, develop critical thinking, core values, and 21st century skills.
The next speaker was Mr. Joseph Randolph Palatao, who talked about formative assessment. He gave us the 5 principles of formative assessment, and here they are. Principle 1, assessment should be holistic and authentic in capturing the attainment of the MELS. Principle number 2, assessment is integral for understanding student learning and development. Principle number 3, a variety of assessment strategies is necessary, with formative assessment taking priority to inform teaching and promote growth and mastery. Principle number 4, assessment and feedback should be a shared responsibility among teachers, learners, and their families. Principle number 5, assessment and grading should have a positive impact on learning. He also left us with some very good reminders about formative assessment and learning. If the student is not yet ready and the activities in the SLM are for practice, they should not be graded. Formative assessment is stepping stones before they attempt summative tests. LES and SLMs are instructional resources that should facilitate student learning in a remote setting. What is important now is to identify the learning needs for all our students. We have to go beyond what they have not achieved.
The next session was led by Mr. James Dina, and this was the workshop where participants from the same region worked together in answering the questions in the template about LAS, SLM, and how they supplement and complement each other. Mr. Bunga reminded us that whatever we learned in this workshop, we should be able to transfer the process when we do the rollouts in our own divisions. After the breakout session, a representative from each region presented the output of their region.
And here is the consolidated result of your outputs yesterday. On the question, what did you find out about the LAS? Your answers were grouped in different topics. So for activities, you said they're simple to complex, they're lower level skills to higher level skills, they're engaging, they're congruent to the SLMs, and they're simple. In terms of assessment, students can monitor their own progress. And then for the self-reflection sheets, based on understanding and experiences in answering the LAS, self-learners what to do next. In terms of its use, they scaffold learning, and they provide for mastery of skills. On its general characteristics, they're aligned with MELF, they're differentiated, they're shorter and simpler than SLM, they're self-directed, they have good content and structure, and they can even stand on its own as a learning resource for distance learning. On the question, what did you find out about the SLM? You answered for mastery of skills and knowledge, self-explanatory, self-contained, self-directed, self-motivating, and self-evaluating. They're aligned and compliant with MELF. They follow the learning episode of the learners. They're flexible. They have good content and structure. And parts and activities are carefully organized and designed to teach and practice the target skills. They have more activities than the LAS. And then
answered a resounding yes to the questions, do you think the LAS supplements the SLM? And here are your reasons. It enriches the learner's knowledge, skills, and feedback giving or receiving through the reflections. The lessons are contextualized. They're simplified and shorter activities to support the more detailed SLMs. LAS supports the mastery learning of the learners as they explore their SLM by providing different, verified, and consistent activities in support of the concepts being presented in SLMs. Has differentiated instruction, serves as the remedial activities of the learners who did not meet the expectations in the SLM. Activities are aligned with MELF, and last provides activities that support the concept introduced in the SLM. In addition, they also reinforce activities that could strengthen the understanding of the competencies. Students can monitor the progress of their own learning. LAS can be used to deepen the understanding of the learners to the lesson. LAS supports the learner's learning of essential skills and knowledge. Activities in the LAS provide opportunities to practice and master what they have learned in the SLM. It enriches the SLM. It deepens the understanding of the lesson. And here's an outlier answer. LAS can be used independently without SLM. Using LAS, it can save thousands of pages of papers. And then you also give a resounding yes to the question, do you think the LAS can be used to complement the SLM? And here are your reasons. LAS can be used as additional activities to support learning. LAS serves as an intervention to those least learned competencies and enrichment as well to those mastered competencies. Competency in LAS and SLMs are the same. Activities presented in the LAS are based on the learning competencies in the MELF. Of course, it's all about the competencies. It is based on MELF, so it follows that LAS has built-in assessment and activities which is scaffold the learners to mastery learning of a certain target objective, and because it provides introduction concepts about the topics, subjects before different activities were presented. In addition, you also said there are activities in the LAS that we cannot find in the SLMs which are of huge help for learners to understand and learn the lesson. And then LAS, of course, you said it's simpler but concise, it's doable and achievable within a day's activity, and the content is conversational. There is a reflection where parents can assess the learning of their children. And then you also said that through the LAS, learners will enhance their knowledge gained from the SLM. It will help achieve the mastery of the topic given to both LAS and SLM. It will provide opportunities to practice or answer more activities to easily understand the lesson. And it will lessen the stress of the learners by having so many activities to answer. However, there are outlier responses as well. So 3 responses said that yes, if the SLMs are not available. No, instead using LAS as complement and think it should be used as the main tool. And no, because the learners should read the SLM first before going to LAS. While the responses said no, it actually highlighted the value of the LAS in distance learning. Now, here is the summary of your feedback on yesterday's sessions. On the question, what is your most significant learning in today's session? For session 1, the presentation of last modules, of course, the learning focused on the LAS and the samples that they presented, how you've learned new things from those presentations. And then on the self-learning modules, rational content and features, of course, the learning focus on the SLM, how it supports learning in distance education, and how they are reflective, and how they are aligned with MELF, and also aligned with the use of the LAS. And then on formative tests, the learning highlighted formative assessment, how important formative assessment is in the learning of the students, and of course how it can be used in SLM and in LAS. And then on the walkthrough on LAS and SLM, this is the breakout session. Of course, in equal measure, the learning focused on LAS and SLM, and how they are both useful to the learners, how they complement each other, and the differences that they have, and how they enhance learning of the students. And then on the question, how can your learning help you as a trainer or teacher? Of course, you said it will help you with your new knowledge. It will help you apply your new learning. It will help you in your teaching. It will be your guide. It will help you in making better learning materials. It will help you develop better strategies. And then on the question, how will you share your learnings with multi-grade teachers amidst the COVID-19 pandemic? On all the sessions, your responses, of course, focused on virtual sharing. There are also responses on face-to-face sharing, but of course, these are limited face-to-face sharing. And then, of course, online, virtual, online, everything, most of them revolved around virtual and online sharing. And it's very nice. You said you'll use whatever platform is available. And then you will also use sharing the learnings in the school learning action cell. And then you give the sessions an overall rating of excellent with sprinkles of very good. And for your other comments, it's again full of appreciation and gratitude, with many of you saying thank you, congratulations. The sessions were excellent, the speakers were really good, the presentations were helpful, and there's again the comment about difficulty in the internet connection, and then also the request for soft copies of the presentation. And then there's a comment that basically sums up what all of us felt yesterday. It was tiring, but definitely really fulfilling. Thank you so much. And that's the recap of yesterday's event.
Thank you, Ms. Ben, for the recap of day two. Before we break for lunch, may we call on our colleagues from the multi-grade team for any additional reminders.
Thank you, Ma'am Ian. Sir James, are you in the room? Anyway, for this afternoon po, we will come back at 1:30 to proceed with our